Hello, everybody. We're really glad that you are joining us on this virtual info session for our graduate programs at the University of Washington Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering in Seattle, Washington. I'm Brenda Larson, and I'm the graduate advisor for both our master's and PhD program. And I'm being joined here by Jennifer Huberman, who is our graduate coordinator. Yes, that is her in the picture there underwater. And we're also very lucky to have Professor Heron, Jeffrey Heron, and PhD student Nivi Kalavakanda joining us as well. Lots of good information today.
Welcome, everybody. So
here's our lineup for the agenda here today. So Speaker Jeff Heron will be first. He'll be sharing some slides of his own with you. You will be able to ask questions through the chat, and Jennifer is monitoring the chat and will answer those questions or ask them of Jeff or Nivi or any of us as we come up upon your questions. All right, so let's start with Jeff, and then we'll get going with our agenda.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm going to now share my screen for my slides, which I, of course, made the mistake of accidentally closing. So give me just 1 second. Here they are. We literally did a run through of this, and I had them open, and then I decided to close them out for some reason. I apologize for that. Okay, so welcome everyone to, just wanted to echo the Brenda's gracious welcome to the ECE virtual grad info session. So I'm Jeffrey Heron, and just as a little background, I grew up in the greater Seattle area, and then I attended the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, where I got my undergraduate degree in electrical engineering. I then spent 3 years, give or take, working in Microsoft Research's hardware prototyping lab as a junior engineer. Kind of was just responsible for building a bunch of interesting test systems for the various researchers that were working there. It was a pretty great job straight out of undergrad. But I always had this kind of itch to get back into grad school because I wanted to do my research of my own. And so I applied and I was fortunate enough to be able to join the University of Washington's electrical. Back then it was just the electrical engineering department. Now, of course, we have electrical and computer engineering in our name. And I was a PhD student here at the UW between 2012 and 2016. And I already think anyway, and back then we didn't have guaranteed funding. So I think that's now changed in terms of incoming PhD students. So lucky you. That will make hopefully your time through these departments a lot easier than it was for us, and that's where it's always great to see when the things get easier over time for students. I knew I wanted to work in the neural engineering space when I joined UW, and my first project was actually with Chet Moritz, who is now ECE faculty, and I was doing a project in sensory augmentation in rats, but over the first couple quarters, I kind of determined that working in animals wasn't really for me. So then I kind of moved to working with Howard Chiswick, who's a different electrical engineering professor, whose focus is on controls. And I did my thesis work, which was on closed loop deep brain stimulation. So that's a system, so that's shown here on the right, where we have implanted devices that have an electrode deep in a patient's brain for the treatment of essential tremor or Parkinson's disease. And I wanted to make these systems more responsive so that basically either neural sensing signals from the brain or wearable signals could be used in a closed loop fashion to drive this neural stimulation in a responsive manner, as opposed to just kind of being a tonic, never changing series of stimulation pulses. I hope that this would make devices both more efficient and also something that could then maybe deliver less side effects or more effective therapy to patients. And that was my thesis work, and my main approach to that was I actually did a lot of work primarily building out research tools for this. So I built software APIs for the implantable devices we were working with. And one implantable device in particular we were working with was the Activa PC+S. And I built out an entire software toolkit for integrating this into closed loop experiments for deep brain stimulation that I then shared with external researchers. When I graduated, the company that made that device, Medtronic, offered me a job to more or less come in and then work with them on their next generation implantable device, which was the Summit system. Sadly, I don't have any pictures of it because of various NDAs and copyright issues. So here's something public from them. But the thing is, this is a new implantable device that's now been implanted in humans to basically kind of continue pushing the envelope in terms of what's available for new therapies in the implantable movement disorder space. But after 4 years there, I got that itch to get back into research again. Which is why then I came back to the University of Washington. Now, though, my official appointment is in the Department of Neurosurgery, actually. So I'm an electrical and computer engineering PhD, but my home department is off in neurosurgery. But I'm an adjunct professor in ECE. So what I do is I actually mentor PhD and master's electrical engineering students within the context of this neurosurgery department. And kind of the way that I do that is my focus is on translational systems. So I build up closed loop systems that basically include multiple different parts, maybe implanted neural devices, external sensing, to basically try to figure out how we can treat neurological diseases or injury better. And really my focus is on bidirectional systems. So systems that are both providing something to the patient, but also reading something out. So it's closed loop as before. And really what this is working in this clinical context for me means I also have to do a lot of regulatory work. So I have to work with the FDA to do investigational device exemptions for using medical devices off-label for new projects or the like. So it's really multifaceted, this type of work. But at a practical level, there's three main platforms that I do this work in. And one of those is we do a lot of research in the operating room. So this is where myself and some of my students go into the OR. Clearly, we're not doing that right now, but hopefully once the current COVID crisis passes, we'll be able to restart some of this work. And basically our patients are patients who are getting implanted for deep brain stimulation, and they're consenting to basically have extra time in the operating room where we do research with them, which is pretty exciting. And so in that sort of platform, we're building up these closed loop systems again to do neuroplasticity paradigms or new algorithm development for future systems. We then kind of also have this semi-chronic set of patients that we work with, who are patients who are implanted with a grid of electrodes or a series of penetrating electrodes for about a week. And these patients are all patients with epilepsy who are getting these electrodes implanted so that we can identify clinically where their epileptic foci are, I suppose. So that then those regions can be surgically resected so that hopefully these patients will then have reduced seizures. But while these patients are being monitored for seizure activity, many of them decide that while they're in the operating room, hospital anyway, they'll participate in research. And for that research, we do all sorts of things where we're stimulating the brain, we're reading from the brain. We're even right now thinking about putting VR headsets on these patients and seeing what they're doing while they're in VR. It's a pretty exciting platform for this sort of work. And then, like my previous work that I was talking about, we're also still have this cadence of long-term chronic implantable studies where we're implanting a device for a new indication and then hopefully tracking and working with that patient over potentially years to come. And so that's kind of the third thrust of this work. Now, some examples of what this actually looks like for students. So one of the students I'm working with is Sabrina Sonnet. She's currently a master's student, but luckily in the fall, luckily for me, I feel, in the fall, she's actually transitioning to be a PhD student. So she's going to be working with us for a while longer. And she's developing automated methods for determining movement disorder symptoms from mobile applications. So this could be an important way for us to then as we have these long-term patients who are implanted with these devices, we could monitor how those systems are doing treating their symptoms remotely, which again is more and more relevant in the current health crisis. So, but then we can also, this can then give us a really rich data set to then hopefully mine and learn more about what the effect of our systems are. Another example is Ben Ferliger, who's a fourth-year PhD student, so he's actually getting relatively close to graduating. And he's been taking the work that I did as a PhD student, which was these closed-loop system developments for essential tremor, and quite frankly, he's making them a lot better, which is pretty exciting for me to see. But he's doing now machine learning optimized optimization of these algorithms so that we can then hopefully automate the procedure of tuning these devices so they end up being something that can more easily be turned into a full medical system in the future. So kind of in summary, I hope this is, at some point, this is a kind of a little bit of a deep dive into electrical engineering related neural engineering research, which I know not necessarily all of you are interested in, but hopefully at the very least, you'll learn a little bit more about, this is actually a pretty large thrust of research at the University of Washington. There's a multitude of faculty in the electrical engineering department that are working in this space. And if you're, I know we have a Q&A session here, but feel free to reach out alternatively as well. So, and that kind of at that point wraps up my little spiel. So I'm going to give the screen back over to Brenda and Jennifer. Or are we going to Nivi now?
I'm opening it up for questions.
Oh, questions.
I put a little chat. If anybody had questions for you, they can put their questions here. If we don't have any questions, we can definitely move on to Nivi. And then if you're able to stay for a little bit and see if any questions pop up, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'm happy to answer questions about general working in industry, kind of what research looks like, neural specific or just at wider, what sort of things there were kind of might come up as a grad student, because I was a grad student also in this program. I'm really happy to be open on any of those fronts. So I think we'll have after Nivi talks, we'll have more Q&A time too, right? So if
Yes.
people come up with questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm unmuting you, Brenda. It looks like you are muted.
Any questions for Jeff? Have we received any yet?
I don't see any questions as of yet. Everyone's being a little shy, but that's okay. We have some time if they want to think of some questions.
Absolutely. I do have a few questions for Jeff, just as a new professor starting in the program and anticipating this autumn when we have our round of admissions for both master's and PhD, and also his own experience going through the admissions process. What do you, Jeff, think was important that you did prior to and during the admissions process? Yeah.
So part of that, of course, is picking, if you're fortunate enough to have multiple acceptances, is picking out where you're going to go between those. And one thing that I felt a lot of confidence, I was lucky to get into two different programs. And one thing that really made UW stick out to me is, and that's because I had this drive to work in the neural engineering field, is the sheer number of professors that are working in that space. I have peers or friends who went also into grad school, and they ended up going to institutions where there was kind of only one professor who they kind of were interested in working with, and basically for whatever reason that professor, things didn't really work out with that professor, and then they kind of ended up at a program where there wasn't a whole lot of places for them to go. So one thing I would just recommend in general is, if you have a real strong passion about a specific interest, is making sure to go to a university with a large kind of group of faculty that are kind of working in that space. And that's one thing that makes UW specifically attractive is we're a large school with a large faculty working with lots of people working in the same areas or overlapping areas. But also specifically, of course, in the area close to my heart, neural engineering, we are one of the strongest schools actually out there, I feel, in terms of sheer number of faculty working on that from different angles. So that would be one thing, is just in terms of making sure that there's, hopefully any school you go to, there's at least 2 or 3 different professors you'd be happy to work with, because professors, of course, also may have limited funding or other things like that. And while UW is attractive because they have this guaranteed funding plan for the first 4 years, so even if a professor doesn't have funding at that moment, you can still start working with them as long as you're willing to TA. That's still that there's, I think, there's a variety of different options in this space.
That's true. So let's put you into the situation, Jeff. You're starting to review applications. Let's start with MS. So, you know, our master's degree, as you know, is about 42 credits, and it can be done in 4 or 5 quarters. Students have the option of a thesis or a coursework master's. If you're looking at students in that area, what would you be looking for?
First off, I think it never hurts to write an email to a professor. Most of the professors that I know at UW, and this is myself included, if they are getting emails from prospective students, we all read them. And I sure as heck do my hardest to try to respond to every one of them. That then translates into, when it comes time to review applications, you remember who it was that reached out. And so I think the thing is I can't probably put enough of an emphasis on trying to form a bit of a connection and have if you can, have a discussion with professors if they have the time to. But at the very least, having an email exchange does help, because then maybe you can get some additional information about what the state is that they're in. So partly it's have they reached out, right? And taken the step to put themselves out there a little bit to try to make a connection to you. Now that being said, there's a lot of professors also who, depending on the time of year, like for example, right now, we're in the ramp up of NIH grant proposal season, and I have so many grants on my plate that there's a lot of emails I'm not answering right now. But again, I'm trying to make sure that if any students are reaching out, they can. In terms of non-networking based things to do, I suppose one thing that's always attractive to me, and this is partly because I do have that background in industry before grad school, is I do pay attention to when someone has industrial experience, whether that be through internships or whether that be through having worked a bit. And I think something too that's important to keep in mind is that, and I'll be frank, the first year I applied to grad schools, I didn't get in anywhere. And the thing is, at a certain point, there isn't necessarily, you can still have a successful graduate school career, even if it takes you a little bit longer than you think to get in. But the thing is, accumulating the skills you accumulate while working in those first couple of years as a junior engineer actually make grad school a lot easier. Come to think of it, when I look back. Now, could I have maybe pushed through and ended up with a PhD at a extra, a year, being a year younger if I had gotten in there? Sure, maybe. But I personally think that the extra skills I accumulated while working in industry between undergrad and grad school actually have put me in a pretty good spot too. So that's just where the one thing I would kind of also suggest is that, kind of gaining industrial experience, that all translates also directly to these sort of to graduate school as well. So if someone has to work a bit or has to keep on working a little bit before coming to grad school, I think that actually makes it a candidate very attractive.
So, if you're looking for a PhD candidate, as you said, we now offer 4 years of full funding in the form of fellowships, TAs, and RAs, depending on the faculty members' funding itself. If you are looking to be a PhD, what should you, when you're discerning master's or PhD, why would you apply directly to PhD, whether it was directly from undergrad or after you'd gotten a master's?
I think part of that is And now I'm realizing that my discussion earlier about when you had asked, the previous question was more about master's students, and I had been answering about the number of, I had been talking about research faculty and advising, and that might have been a little off the mark because I guess that's more of a answer geared towards PhD students. So I apologize for that. But coming back to this question now, which is, I actually, to be perfectly honest, I just lost it going back.
That's okay. Just wondering, like, you know, I've had people actually ask me the question, Brenda, should I apply to master's or PhD?
Master's or PhD. Thank you. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was fortunate when I was working in Microsoft Research, that hardware prototyping lab. I had a mentor who had a PhD himself. He was actually a professor at Stanford for a short period of time before going off. He determined that he didn't want to work in academia. The man's name was Tom Blank. He was a really great mentor, and he told me fundamentally when I asked him this question, you get a PhD when you want to lead and manage researchers in a lot of ways. And what that means is that with a PhD, whether you are in, running an academic lab, or you're running a kind of working off an industry, the idea is that you have the skills to run a lab. Someone with a master's degree can do cutting edge research. Someone with a bachelor's degree can do cutting edge research. The master's degree, more often than not, can get you a higher paycheck. You'll have some additional skills that might, often more often than not, a master's degree will put you in a better position for industry. But if you're just interested in the research, there's actually a lot of interesting ways that you can do research. What a PhD gives you is the qualification to run a lab, to determine research objectives, research paths, break down, write proposals, keep it going. And that's basically, so in some ways, it's what I would say is, if you want to do research, there's a lot of ways you can do it. But if you want to lead it, that's where a PhD starts to become necessary. Great.
That helps a lot.
We do have one question, Brenda.
Sure.
If that's okay. Okay. So Teresa is asking, what specific types of skills should you highlight in a PhD application coming from industry?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think some of that is there's technical skills, of course. You have real projects that you can, kind of concrete projects that you've hopefully worked on that you can basically discuss as kind of concrete, hopefully team-based exercises or team type of teamwork, because, and that's actually really critical in some ways, more so than undergraduate team projects and stuff like that, because really, when you're a graduate student in a lab, you are both a student and an employee. And so the thing is, what's important to think about that is the lab is a team which will have objectives, and being someone who can work as an employee in some ways as part of a team that can basically get things done it's a critical soft skill. It's not a hard technical skill, but these are things that basically are really important in industry, of course, that totally translate to grad school, but something people don't necessarily talk about a whole lot. And that's really relevant actually in my area of neural engineering, because in order to get anything done, I have to work with clinicians, I have to work with computer scientists, I have to work across all these different groups of people to get anything done. And it's science is a team these days, because all the easy things that people have done, can do by themselves, have already been done. Now, that being said, emphasizing teamwork is a really hard thing to do in an application. So, that's where hopefully if you can bring in examples in your letters or things like that, that might help. Now, in terms of other things, I think that's where by emphasizing an increased technical competency such that you'll be able to get up and running quicker and be a more effective team member in terms of the actual technical work, is another avenue of emphasizing. And that's what I focused on the most. In my industrial experience, I had to do a lot of system prototyping. And I basically advertised myself when I was talking to professors, I was a system prototyper, and I can just put things together. And that was attractive enough of people up from the professor side. Oh, okay, I know what this guy can do. He has examples of how he's done it. And he's also now, and he, you know, I need that in my lab, right? So being able to kind of put yourself into kind of a role and be like, I'm really good at this thing because I've done all this stuff work off in industry. I proved it. That can be in other good ways. So hopefully, Teresa, that helps. That helps, hopefully.
I was going to say too, from the applications I've seen, and as Jeff has said, it does depend whether you're applying for master's or PhD, but there is some help if you become really familiar with the faculty that are researching in the areas that you're interested in. So if you were to go to our website and you go under the research tab, so ece.uw.edu, and then go to research tab, and we'll talk more about the different areas, but then become familiar with which faculty are working in your areas, read some of what they've done or read about their projects, so that when you do write in your statement of purpose what you're interested in doing and what your goals are, you can refer to faculty within our program that are who you might be interested in working with and why. All right, any other questions?
I don't see
Okay.
anything that's come up so far.
Well, we'll have time, some more time in a little bit, but let's move on and ask Nivi to talk a little bit about her own path to PhD, what she's researching right now, and also she'll be available for questions as well. So hold on one second, let me get to her slide. All right, Nivi, go ahead.
So hi everyone, I am Nivi Kalavakonda. I am a third-year PhD student in the biorobotics lab. I work with Professor Blake Hannaford. So my research is primarily at the intersection of robotics and computer vision applied to the field of surgery. And I was initially a master's student in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. So when I joined, the department was actually called Department of Electrical Engineering. So this is actually a new name that the department has taken on primarily because of all like the diversity of courses and research that happens here at the university. So when I was applying to be a master's student here, so I'm an international student. I went to a rather small school where, you know, a lot of us didn't have resources to do any kind of research when I was there. So I took a year off after undergrad to join an academic lab and essentially explore. I knew I wanted to be in robotics, but I didn't know what area of robotics or what exactly were the different opportunities available. So I took a year off and spent some time in research, just trying to figure out if I wanted to be in aerial robotics or ground robotics, or, you know, for the first time I heard about surgical robotics. And while working in that space, I saw the kind of impact that working in the medical field can have, you know, on people. And so I decided that that's kind of where I wanted to go and explore further. And I read a lot of Blake's work when I was in the space, and I reached out to him during this time when I was applying. And he did sound interested in just essentially mentoring and like helping me learn more about the field of surgical robotics. You know, and just to kind of reiterate what Jeff was saying, I think the best way to kind of like reach out to faculty is like email them, and email them with genuine interest. Because if you're like copy pasting the same email to 10 different faculty, it's hard for them to figure out what exactly in their research interests you, because like each faculty does a lot of different works. Each student is working on different aspects of research, for even if it's like, you know, for a field as broad as surgical robotics. Like I work in computer vision, and what I do is very specific. So in that sense, the papers I read helped me a lot when I was writing to Blake. So I wrote specifically about what interested me in his research and where I wanted to what I wanted to explore. I ended up applying to the university. One thing that I am very excited to share is that you no longer are required to submit a GRE score. So I remember struggling with that when I was initially applying. And then yeah, so I decided to join the university, but I was still not 100% sure if I wanted to go down the PhD route. One was because I wasn't entirely sure of the working style of my advisor at that time. And he was also on a sabbatical, so I wasn't sure when he was going to come back. So there were a lot of different uncertainties. So I decided I would go down the master's thesis route. And I chose to work in augmented and virtual reality applied to surgery, which if you notice on this slide, like there's no relation to what that is. So during this time, I decided to learn a lot of different skills here at the university and kind of build up on what other areas I can explore. And that's kind of how I ended up at human-robot interaction. And computer vision is actually something that is not or that was not done a lot in my lab. And this was something that I was able to kind of get my research group to start moving towards. So this is also something that you can speak with your advisor and explore. One other thing I also wanted to touch on is that when you are joining the university, it doesn't always mean that you're going to be a faculty. So in my case, one of the things that I did realize was I didn't necessarily want to stay in academia for a long time. And so what I've been doing is every summer, I've been trying out different types of industry research internships and just trying to find out where I want to head with my PhD. And, just like Jeff, these kind of industrial experiences have been extremely helpful in solidifying my research direction, because I moved from my undergrad into a master's and into a PhD. I didn't take any time off to work in industry. So these internships have been extremely helpful in kind of solidifying what I do with my research. So yeah, and one other thing I want to just highlight is the university is it's given me a lot of different opportunities and avenues that I didn't even know existed initially when I came here. So I am also a part of the Science, Technology, and Society Studies department, because I really like kind of working and exploring the social shaping of technology aspect of things. So that's kind of what I'm able to do with that department and with my advisor in the law school. So yeah, so that's kind of an overview of the different things that you can do here. I'm happy to answer any questions that come up related to this.
Yes, don't be shy. We've got a professor and a student here who can give you the real information about what it's like and admissions. So whether you think of questions as we're going along through the rest of the slideshow, or whether you have some now, don't be shy.
I don't see anything coming up just yet.
Okay, so Nivi, thank you so much for that. Both you and Jeff have been very helpful. There's nothing like talking about your own path to see what you went through and your thought process and what you discovered. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about with you guys is just a little bit at a glance. When someone determines which universities they're going to apply to, a lot of them do look at rankings, and University of Washington, Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering, as well as our engineering doctoral programs, are highly rated throughout the US and in the world. We're one of the premier electrical engineering programs in the Northwest, and we're the largest engineering program in our College of Engineering here at the UW. In total, you can see we have a large number of graduate students as of spring 2020, 254 daytime and 254 MSCE, which includes daytime and our evening professional master's program, which we'll talk about in a minute, as well as 161 PhD students, with 56 faculty and 26 IEEE fellows and counting. We have a lot of good staff and faculty to help guide you in your program and really to prepare you for where you want to go. So if you were to go, like I said, to our research tab, you'd notice that we've organized the research into 6 major areas. Underneath these areas are faculty. Oftentimes faculty are listed in more than one of these research areas. As Jeff and Nivi have spoken about, you know, they each have varied interests and varied projects going on that might overlap in different areas and different departments. The walls are not high between departments. I have students who have an advisor in CSE and maybe a co-advisor in ECE. Same goes for math, physics, you know, ME, a lot of the different areas. So there's a lot of possibility. So these are just the 6 areas, and I'll let you explore those on your own a little bit. We are committed to diversity, and we're really working hard to represent women and other groups that are not typically represented in engineering. Nationally, you could see that we are ahead of the curve in terms of awarding MSs and PhDs to women. We also are way ahead of the curve for women tenure track faculty, and women in underrepresented groups make up almost 1/4 of our undergrad and graduate student population. So we have a couple of different options for graduate programs. If you are an undergraduate at UW in any of the departments, or if you're with one of our partner universities, you can actually apply to be admitted to the master's program in the summer before your senior year. We open up the application in July. The call goes out for applications. It's only open for a couple of weeks, but if you meet the eligibility requirements in terms of being prior to your senior year, having approximately a 3.7, I say approximate because if you were a 3.69, I would say go ahead and apply, or 3.65. And that is actually based on what our average cum GPA is for master's students that are admitted in the daytime program. The advantage of this program, you can earn up to 9 credits of graduate credit as a senior that can apply towards your master's degree. There is an online information session or 2 coming up. I'm sorry, I have to look here. Wednesday, May 20th and Friday, May 29th. So please do check those out on our ECE events calendar. And actually the link is right up here above. Okay, regular master's program for the daytime is 42 credits. You can do a coursework or a thesis master's. So that means if you truly want to get involved in research as Jeff's student and as several other students are, or if you prefer just to do the coursework and learn from that and maybe do a little bit of research, you can choose. You can guide not only your specialization, but as you can see from our research areas, we have lots of different courses in many different areas so that you can kind of choose for your master's, maybe a multidisciplinary specialization approach or a particular area that you want to specialize in. For PhD, it's 90 credits. And of course you can count your master's degree credits, 30 minimum if it's from outside UW, to your 90 PhD credits. If you're coming from a program within the UW, moving straight into PhD, you could probably apply more than 30 because you'll see them come over into your degree if they apply to the requirements. We also have, let's see, okay, I just want to go over one thing. Do we have a PMP slide, Jen?
Yes, it should be in here. I'm not sure.
Okay.
In
So
relation.
we'll wait and see. If not, remind me, we'll talk a little bit about our evening master's program as well. But for right now, for the regular daytime programs, you do need to apply by December 15th for admission the following autumn. So if you apply this December 2020, you'll be applying for admission in September of 2021. You will be notified by March of 2021 for autumn of 2021. April 15th, we ask that you respond and accept or decline our offers. That's the national deadline and helps us to plan. And remember, as Nivi mentioned, we no longer require or even consider the GRE in our admissions. So 3.0 cumulative GPA is the requirement that is set by the UW Graduate School. So in order to apply and be accepted, you have to have a 3.0 minimum. A 3.5 is recommended to be competitive. However, remember that this is a range, and there are a lot of factors that are important in addition to GPA, such as your recommendations and your statement of purpose, as well as what courses you in fact have taken. So remember that it is a holistic approach to admission. We do require TOEFL under the conditions if an international applicant has not gotten their degree from an English-speaking university or English-taught university. And if you do score a 92 on the TOEFL IBT, you will not have to take any additional English language program courses. All right. The other thing I want to talk about is that remember that applications received after December 15th, we cannot accept. And that is because very soon after the application closes, we send the applications over to begin review with faculty and with our student review team. All applications materials are submitted electronically, and they're only accepted once per year for that December 15th deadline. The application typically opens around October 1st each year. So you're going to need to be able to pay an $85 fee for your application. This is all online, as I said. Your resume or CV, unofficial transcripts, statement of purpose, and 3 letters of recommendation, 2 for the BS to MS program. And if you are in the US as a resident, you do have the option of submitting a personal statement, which may talk about any sort of hurdles you've overcome or that may have affected your academic performance. And of course, your TOEFL scores if appropriate there. So here's the Professional Master's Program. So May Lim, who's pictured here, is the director of the Professional Master's Program. As you notice, it is a few more credits, 45 credits. However, the degree itself is the same degree as the daytime program. You will receive a University of Washington Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering Master's. It is coursework only. There is the possibility for a little bit of research, but it's more focused on industry. So basically, we have teachers from industry that come in to teach, industry, an advisory board that talks about what sort of classes would be good to teach, and therefore May's been very instrumental in helping to create cutting edge classes that are in response to that sort of input. So there will be classes you can't get in the daytime that are offered in the evening. So students can go full or part-time. And the nice thing about it is you can work and have an internship and go to school. I guess either our work and internship, you're both working. But the point is you can accomplish your master's in the evening. So sample courses are from these areas listed here, a wide variety of courses. So one thing to remember as a difference between the daytime and the evening MS is that for the evening MS, you'll get a general master's degree that does not necessarily specialize in a particular area. Whereas in the daytime, you can choose to specialize. There are enough courses offered that you can specialize in a particular area, and you can do more research. So there are different deadlines for the Professional Master's Program. Their early deadline is January 5th, and the regular deadline is May 15th. So in fact, at times, if you do apply for our daytime masters, and if you are not initially admitted, we will pass along applications to our professional masters for consideration. So just be aware that that is an automatic consideration for anybody applying to masters. And again, no GRE is required here. So let's say you don't have a degree in EE. If you're in math or sciences or something like physics, you've got a perfect background to actually move into electrical and computer engineering. There might be a few things that you might want to take coursework at the UW or in the summers at community college. And these are our core undergrad EE courses, 215, 233, and 235. Keep in mind that in some disciplines like physics, you might have some courses that are very closely related to what you're seeing here. So do take a look at what these courses are and whether you already have that content. We do recommend programming skills at the level of CSE 142 and CSE 143. Could be very important in your success. So funding is a big question. I think it's a question a lot of us think of first when we think of going to graduate school. It's expensive. How will I pay for it? And I think the answer to start with MSs, there is no guaranteed funding. So what happens is if you are resourceful, before you even start the program, you'll be contacting potentially faculty you want to TA for. You might be contacting faculty that you want to research with who may have some RA funding available. But typically for master students, you have to be prepared to pay for 1 to 2 quarters initially. You will meet faculty, you'll make contacts, and as I said, sooner or later, after maybe taking some research credits or classes with potential faculty that you want to work with, you would probably be able to find funding. Most of our students do. For PhD students, they do have that mix of TA, RA, or fellowships, but no matter what, they're guaranteed 4 years of funding. And in reality, they're funded until the end of their program in most cases. So a TA or an RA, teaching assistantship, research assistantship, means that you have a 50% full-time equivalent appointment that comes with several good benefits. 1, you get a full tuition waiver except for about $300 in fees each quarter. You also get health benefits, so health insurance is covered. And you also get a monthly stipend, currently about $27.58 a month. All of those things can be very helpful in helping to pay for your graduate education. International applicants, be aware that you must have a speaking score of 26 or have a degree at an English taught university in order to be eligible for a TA position. So we do encourage MSs to apply for external fellowships as well as internal fellowships. And there are lots of resources available for you to look. We have an Office of Fellowships and Awards that's available, an Office of Merit Scholarships and Awards. And I really encourage you to look into that and Google it on our UW website or the graduate school website to see more resources. We also encourage MSs to apply for the quarterly TA positions. They are advertised every quarter for the following quarter. And those, as we said, have those same benefits. All right. So student life. Basically, we have a lot of different organizations that make your life in ECE a lot more fun and basically help you to meet other students. And so one of those is the ECE GSA, the Graduate Student Association. The Graduate Student Association has, bowling, pumpkin carving, all kinds of socials that they put on each quarter. And they really do get our graduate students out of the lab. We do pry our students out of the lab and out of their classes to enjoy life a little bit. And so that's a great organization. We have an IEEE student chapter that helps connect students with industry. So several industry events throughout the year, including a Women in Engineering chapter and a casino night, which puts faculty, industry, and students together for a fun night of poker and roulette. We have a student advisory council that influences and impacts how ECE is run, everything from curriculum to initiatives such as, evaluations, TA evaluations, faculty evaluations, a lot of different things that are of concern to students can come to the department through the Student Advisory Council. And of course, the UW College of Engineering has Women in Science Engineering, very active in promoting women, recruiting women. And in ECE, we do have sponsorship for the Grace Hopper Conference, which is for computer science and computer engineering type interests. Our Society of Women Engineers at the UW College of Engineering, very active again. Lots of great opportunities to meet with industry through their evenings with industry and all sorts of events. We have an engineering career fair. Graduate students do go to the career fairs. They get their internships at career fairs and sometimes even make contacts for employment after they complete their degrees. So these are very helpful. And it's not just for engineering, but there's several throughout the year that you can attend. There are also some great challenges, competitions. These two, the Business Plan and Environmental Innovation Challenge, are sponsored by the Foster School of Business. And as you can imagine, assemble teams of students from multidisciplines and put them together to develop solutions or develop a business plan, a solution to environmental problem. And many of these are actually promoted to go to market. So it's a great opportunity. It does have rewards, a $10,000 winning reward, lots of good stuff. All right, so as you do try to go to graduate school and get into graduate school, there are several fellowships that come up. And I do invite you to go onto the websites just by Googling on the internet, go to the PhD research fellowships or other fellowships. I think Ada Lovelace is for women and underrepresented groups, and I think it's for MS as well as PhD. So don't assume that any of these are just for PhD, but rather do some research. I think IBM also offers a research fellowship, and there's just many more. All right, I've been talking a lot, and now it's time for you guys to ask us some questions. All of us are still here. Jeff's here, Nivi's here, and you have a couple of advising staff. So in the chat, do ask questions now. This is your time.
We don't have any questions for the group. I did have a couple specific questions that I already answered, specific to students, but nothing general, right, just yet.
All right.
Here's your chance.
Well, please note on this slide, you guys, that we do have weekly virtual drop-in sessions for students interested in electrical and computer engineering graduate programs. You can come any Friday, 2:30 to 3:30, talk to Jen, and she can answer your questions there as well. And there's the Zoom link. It's the same every week, so be sure to check that out. And our emails are right here and our website. So just reach out if you find we complete this program tonight and you do have some questions. You know, we're going to be here, so don't hesitate to send us a question. All right, one last chance before we say goodbye. Any questions there, Jen?
I don't see anything.
All right, well, a big thank you to Nivi and Jeff for being with us here today. You guys,
Thank you so much.
you give the straight story about what's going on. We appreciate it. So,
You all have a great evening.
Great.
all right, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You too.